Hello, welcome to Alyssa Jean's Reviews. We are here to talk about Season 1, Episode 3 of Marvel's What If. What if the Earth lost its mightiest heroes, the Avengers? And here to talk about that with me this week, our special guest, Rob from Smikring Guns Reviews, Loki of S.H.I.E.L.D. Say hello there, Rob.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Super excited to talk about this particular episode, seeing as how I'm a massive Agents of Shield fan. I feel real lucky that I got to talk about this one. So yeah, I'm just let's get ready to dive in.
All right. Mark. Mark from Enchantment of Eternity, who is here with me every week. Say hello.
Hello, everyone. Great to be here again. Talk about this as definitely my favorite episode thus far. And as I was just mentioning to you, just before we went on air, I'm not feeling well tonight. So if I seem a bit out of it, I was just a little bit sick. But I'm not going to miss this discussion because I'm really looking forward to it.
Okay. All right. Well, this ought to be interesting. We'll get into our overall thoughts. Sounds like you two are a lot more positive on this than I am. So I'll let you guys go first. It is definitely not my favorite episode so far, but I'll let you guys go first and then I'll give my thoughts. So let's start. We usually start with our guests. So Rob, why don't you give your thoughts? It sounds like a lot of Agent of Shield excitement going on. So lay it on
Well,
us.
I was kind of where you are, I think, at first. I had to go through a lot of phases through this. Like I really liked the first episode. I had a lot of problems with the second one, and it made me even more worried about this one. And the initial viewing of it, I had a lot of things going on in my head, a lot of questions, a lot of things that I was like, what? Then I watched it again, and I tried to look at it through a different perspective, a slightly different perspective, and I found myself really digging it. Um, I just kind of let go of some of the petty issues I had with it, and just ran with it. And since I love Shield, not just Agents of Shield, but I like the whole. I like Nick. I love Nick Fury. I love all the Shield aspects that they use. I liked how that was incorporated here. I love that they got Clark Gregg back. They gave him some of the best lines in this because he always has some of the best lines in Shield. And even though it was kind of some of it was pretty obvious where it was going, in the end, I really liked how the what if wasn't something that they really that they could reveal until the end. That bothered me at first, but then once I watched it the second time, I was like, no, it's the only way, and it doesn't have to just follow that same structure every single time of him telling you what the what if is at the beginning or where the change is. It's more like how it would have ruined the mystery. I at first thought that was like, oh, I needed this, that, and the other thing. But I realized I really didn't, to me. And I ended up just really loving this. And I've talked to Darren about this episode going into this like many, many times. I was like, I don't know. I was really apprehensive about this, like really. And I am so happy for myself, at least, to be proven wrong. And I'm now more excited to go into the future episodes than I was going into this one. So
Cool.
that's my initial thought.
Cool. So what are your thoughts on this episode, Mark?
All right, so this I really like this one because it seemed more like the kind of what if that I was looking forward to. Like I talked in the previous two ones about which were both, what if this person was actually this person? And this one seemed more like, and they were fine, like I still enjoyed them, but this one seemed more like the kind of a really different what if scenario. What if like all the Avengers were killed off before the Avengers were formed? And I thought that was a really interesting concept. So I was really having fun with the sort of parallel universe-ness of it all. And I really now it is, I can almost predict what your issue is going to be with this episode. I could be wrong, because I had a slight issue with which was the mystery. It seemed too much like a standard ha da da da, he's the killer type mystery thing. But you know what? I was able to enjoy it regardless of that, because I think the way that they built up to the mystery, the way they explored the mystery through using Black Widow and Nick Fury reminded me a lot of Winter Soldier, and there's some parallels which I'm sure we'll get into later on, which I was enjoying, and I just liked having this glimpse of this totally different scenario of what would have went down, and so this was my favorite one thus far because of that, mainly because it wasn't just as simply, ooh, this character is actually this character. It was like just a totally different scenario of what we saw before.
Cool. Yeah, and actually, you're wrong. That's not my issue with it. I actually like the mystery.
Oh, okay. All right.
And you know, I don't think this was a bad episode or anything like that. I think overall, the first third of the season, the first 3 out of 9, were, I would say, solid. I think I might put this one slightly beneath the Peggy Carter one as my least favorite, but I would still like give it like a solid like 7 out of 10. Like, it's still good. I did enjoy the mystery. I did enjoy what Rob was talking about, how the what if moment, the actual origin, you know, in the first episode where the Watcher was like, aha, that's where it happens. Like, we actually find out that happened 2 years earlier, and we don't find that out until the end, and I liked that. I liked how the mystery was done. I liked the resolution to the mystery. I had a lot of issues with the plot. It felt clunky. It felt like it was kind of all forced together, like they have a puzzle in front of them, and the puzzle pieces they have don't quite fit, but they try to just try to cram them in. Like, the plot didn't flow well. I had a real problem with all of the events from those films happening in the same week, though then I later found out that's previously established canon. There was actually a comic book that was a prelude to the Avengers about Nick Fury's bad week that lays out how all of those movies happen in the same week. I don't buy it. I don't care if it's previously established canon. I don't see how Nick Fury and Coulson can go to those different events. Now, granted, in the Incredible Hulk film, they didn't go there, but now they do. And I don't know. I just didn't fit well together with me. Yes, square pegs in round holes. And then the thing with Hank Pym killing Thor really bugged me. It wouldn't have bugged me if they didn't like stick in this line at the end where Hank Pym says, "Oh, I killed Thor because he looked like a big muscular hero, and I knew you would try to recruit him," because he wasn't one of the original. You know, Nick Fury didn't know who the hell Thor was at that point. He wasn't a part of the Avengers Initiative, so there really was no reason to kill Thor. And I would have been okay with it if they didn't throw in that line, "Oh, he looked like a big hero, and I knew you would try to recruit him." I was like, what's he gonna do? Like, go around California and killing all these big muscle men with long hair because Nick Fury might recruit them? It really bugged me. So I just had a hard time with the flow of the plot. So that's why I kind of put this slightly beneath the Peggy Carter one. But that said, all the episodes were solid. Solid 7. Very good. I did enjoy the mystery. There's a lot of things I really, really did enjoy about this episode. Some of the things that you guys were talking about. So I'm not saying it's bad or anything. It just wasn't my favorite.
That's funny. None of that bothered me at all. Like I was just perfectly okay with it, willing to just go with it. Yeah, the only thing that bothered me was the Hank Pym reveal that seemed kind of forced. But then when I think about it, like I totally agree with what you and Rob were saying earlier. Like I love how the change is something that happened years before, and then because that's something we talked about in our first discussion. Like, are they going to do that every episode? We're going to be like, oh, that's where the change happened, because that would be dumb. And I do like that they didn't do it this time. And so the more I think about because it's just hard to accept like Hank Pym being such a mustache twirly villain, because that's not how we know him, but that's the whole what if of it all. But I still think even then, with like the different scenarios, a bit of a kind of out of the blue and like it's stereotypical mystery. So that's like the only really issue I had with it. But other than that, like I really enjoyed the flow of it for me personally.
Yeah. And I think I was the only one bothered by Samuel L. Jackson's voiceover. Like everybody complained about Sebastian Stan in the first episode. I wasn't bothered by it. But to me, like, I don't know. Like I've seen since then scenes from the original films of Nick Fury, and there's just like he just falls flat in this for me. I don't know. Maybe if I watch it again, I'll like it better. But I just seemed like, I don't know, it was very cardboard or something. I just didn't like. And I don't think Samuel L. Jackson usually does voiceovers. He didn't do Mace Windu in the Clone Wars, so I don't know. I just. Yeah, there's just a lot of things that bothered me about this episode.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I didn't have an issue with Samuel L. Jackson. I actually kind of liked his voiceover. Who I did have an issue with was the actress who got to play Black Widow. Like, I didn't think she sounded anything like Black Widow. Like, all the other different, because they couldn't, all the other voice actors who we talked about this in previous episodes, seems like they did a really good job emulating the actor, the character. Like, whoever did Steve Rogers did a really good job of sounding like Chris Evans. Whereas here, she sounded nothing like Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah, and Tony Stark was, I guess, the guy who did one of the animated shows, Marvel shows before, but it wasn't Robert Downey Jr., but he sounded just like him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
For me, I like when you talk about the plot, I wish that they weren't so married to the half-hour, limit. I think that this is an episode, and all of them really, maybe not so much I think the Peggy Carter episode got its point across pretty well. I think this one could have done with an extra 10 minutes, and not to be greedy, just literally to let things happen a little bit more, develop the mystery a little bit more, because it just kind of felt really rushed, because they got to hit all these things before the time's up, and if I had an issue with the plot like being like that, I would say it's that trying to do too much and too little of the time. As far as the voice talent goes, wow, we're all kind of like picking different people, because like I like Samuel L. Jackson in this. I liked Lake Bell, who's got kind of a husky voice anyway, as Scarlett. She does not sound like her, but I thought that if they couldn't get her, this was passable. I thought some of the lines deliveries were okay. Mine was, and it's not even the actor's fault, it's the writing. I felt like the way they wrote Loki was a little too comic book stiff. Like, I am Loki of Asgard. I've got the thing to do to you. Like, it just felt a little like I really was reading comic book words that can be a little too, it doesn't translate well to TV. You have to actually give them, you have to actually sound like people. And in this, he kind of sounded like a couple of times just real stiff and real like, and again, it wasn't Tom's fault, because when he was able to let loose, like, hello, trickster god, like stuff like that was like really fun. But the initial beginning of introducing him felt almost like almost, if I didn't know any better, I would say that it just felt like they were putting in the old lines from other movies and just putting, I am Loki of Asgard, pause, kneel before, or got, like, it just didn't quite feel right, some of it. But other than that, I thought that the voice acting was pretty good. Yeah, Jackson could have been a little livelier. Who I thought did really good, even though with very little, was Michael Douglas.
Michael Douglas was great, actually. Yeah, he did great. Okay, I want to actually get into the episode, but I want to say hi to people in the chat. We've got Brandon Howells as usual. Allison, thank you for joining us. Allison says, I felt like I was missing something this whole episode, and Brandon Howells concurs. So what do you mean missing something, like as far as you didn't understand it, or what do you mean? Or it's like you just felt like something was off on the episode, or probably don't remember the early MCU movies well enough. Oh, is that okay? I see. All right. Let's go ahead and get into the episode. So we'll go through the episode. We'll follow Nick Fury on his tour of the Phase 1 films as he goes through each Phase 1 film, starting with Iron Man 2, with the scene with Tony Stark in the big giant donut, and it plays out very similarly. But this time, after Natasha gives him that antidote, he dies. And I watched a video that showed the scenes back to back, and it's interesting how she says the same line that she said in the film, but then she kind of pauses and draws it out. I don't remember the exact line now, but she kind of draws it out because he's dying. And I thought I liked this scene. I thought it was a good way to set up the mystery. As I said, I did actually like the mystery part of it, because honestly, I saw this happen and I was like, I have no idea who could possibly be behind this. And that's kind of why I enjoyed the mystery. As we went through, I had no idea. And I was also a little surprised because I think Rob might have touched on this before, but we didn't really know what this was going to be about going into it. Like everything that I saw about it was something about Loki invasion, Loki doing diplomacy, but it said nothing about the Avengers being murdered. So that was like a fresh, brand new thing. As soon as I saw the title, "What if the Earth lost its mightiest heroes?" I was like, "Oh, that's what this was about." So I like this. I thought this was a really good opening scene to kind of draw you into the episode. I'll start over with Rob. What were your thoughts on this opening sequence here with the Iron Man 2?
Well, knowing what we know now, and I won't dive too far into it, but what Brandon's saying is like, how easy is it to take out an Avenger? Well, really, I mean, what happened here was it kind of felt like Batman, how Batman would do something. Like he would have a plan to take out like everybody a certain way, like know their weaknesses, figure out all this stuff. You need a really smart person to do this. But as far as the very first part goes, I mean, I love Robert Downey Jr. I know this wasn't Robert Downey Jr., but it's supposed to represent Robert Downey Jr. And I liked him as Iron Man, but I didn't really care for his movies as much as others. So when he got taken out, I was just kind of like, this is nice subversion to what people were probably thinking was going to happen. And, taking out who is a lot of people's favorite character right away, so unceremoniously. Just, he's giving a cure and then he is just dead. The guy who could invent anything, figure out anything with tech, and he's killed just like nothing in front of them. I really dug it. Because of how this starts out the entire episode, which is there was an idea. They cover this a few times over the episode. Is Jackson talking about the idea of the Avengers and what this could mean to the world, and then going on with like they even bring up like the term hope a lot in this, and it carries through, and it's a great way to, like, if you look at how other shows do the like a procedural, like a what are the Law and Order type of shows where you get that first death and it's always like this big deal, and they picked the right person to kill off right away, and just boom, and no one knows what's going on, and your average viewer is like, they just killed the guy who was gonna snap and do everything in Endgame, and now he's just gone. And I loved that it was just so matter of fact, and we just jump into the rest of it. Just really, really cool.
Yeah. Also, before I turn to Mark, I also want to just say that Iron Man 2 is my least favorite in the entire MCU. So the fact that they cut off Iron Man 2 and it never happens really, or the rest of it doesn't happen, I'm okay with that in that universe. Okay. Anyway, Mark, go ahead. What are your thoughts on this part?
Yes, I don't remember Iron Man 2 as much. I don't remember how this like differs from it, or this scene was in Iron Man 2, I guess. Um but yeah, no, I agree with what both of you were saying about this. That this was, and I do really love the mystery of the episode. I think that is definitely the strength. I think this is the great way to start that mystery, was to kill off one of the most beloved characters immediately and so nonchalantly and so unceremoniously. That's what really made this brilliant. That's kind of, as I said before, this is like the kind of thing I was really looking forward in a what if, like to really like take chances. And I think I heard before, like someone else referred to this as the darkest of the first three episodes, and I definitely think that would be accurate, since they kill off a lot of these main beloved characters like right away. And I love that they were willing to go there in that place, and I do love how like framing Black Widow for the thing it's really like, because she, you know, that when she says that definitely wasn't me, you know she's telling the truth, you know she's been framed, and so it really does a great job of setting that intrigue and getting you invested for the rest of the episode. So yeah, I really like this scene.
Yeah, never for a second would you think that the Black Widow was responsible for that at all.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I think it definitely drew me in, got me invested in this mystery, and I do like that about What If. That I did like that about this episode in particular, that they're willing to like go there, and like you can kill off main characters because it's an alternate timeline. That's why I thought in the first episode that Steve Rogers would just be dead, because like it's an alternate timeline, so he could just be killed off, and he was still alive. So I like that they do that. Let's move on to Nick Fury's tour of Phase One. He goes over to Thor. Well, he doesn't at first. It's Coulson, and I've already talked about what I didn't like about the scene, so I won't rehash it. I'll talk about some of the things I did like. And Rob touched on this at the top too. How I think that Coulson had some of the best lines, and I I loved his line about Thor's hair, and I almost thought that was in the original film, but he wouldn't have been talking to Nick Fury in the original film, right? So that I don't think that was, but it was just so smooth and just flowed well and just was so in character that it almost seemed like it should have been in the original film. But I absolutely love that line. He's when Nick Fury was just like, "Wait, excuse me," and he's like, "It's an accurate description, sir." I thought that was great. Um, yeah, I mean, I do have problems with the way Thor was killed, why Thor was killed, and why did he not just kill Clint Barton right then and there? But you know, uh, other than that, I thought, yeah, the build up to that scene, I thought was really fun. Mark, we'll start with you this time. What's your thoughts on this scene?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much to say about the scene. I really liked it. The Coulson line, of course, is amazing, and then the Hawkeye sort of backed up. It's like, oh, he's right, he is beautiful, and sort of expanded upon like that kind of camaraderie. That's what really, got me into it and got me to feel like these are the characters I am familiar with. Um, but I didn't really have an issue with why they killed Thor. I'm actually perfectly okay with that. I think there's a certain like suspension of disbelief I'm willing to go with dear, well, he's a main character. So that's why, and we know he's going to join. We know that he's going to join the Avengers. So I'm just willing to go with it or whatever. But yeah, there was another shocking moment to me. The moment where, and it was just like, oh, they're really just going for it. They're just going to kill them all first. Iron Man, and then all of a sudden Hawkeye. And again, in this case, Hawkeye was framed. He's telling the truth when he said that he didn't pull that trigger. So yeah, I thought it was a really good ramping of the mystery. So yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, I would have been totally willing to suspend disbelief if they didn't have to add in that cheesy line where Hank Pym is like, "Well, I killed him because I figured you would." It reminds me, Mark, of what you kind of said, and you've said about Star Trek Discovery, how they point things out in universe where if it would be better off if they didn't. Like, it's better off if you don't try to cover up your plot hole. Like, I would have been okay with it if they didn't have that line at the end with Hank Pym saying, "Oh, I just knew you were going to sign him up," because that just makes it so much worse for me. But anyways, I don't want to harp on that too much.
No,
Rob, what did you think?
I definitely.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Mark.
I was just gonna say, I definitely see what you're saying. Yeah, definitely can see that point of view. I just personally didn't mind them covering it up. It didn't bother me as much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rob, any thoughts on this scene?
Again, it's kind of playing and messing with the audience and their love for the characters. You get Tony in the first scene, and he's in that real. He's near death's door already. He's got the infection that he's trying to cure, and everybody in that, people love him. People love Robert Downey Jr., and so you see him in peril and you see him sick, and oh yeah, they're giving him the injection at this part, and it's all great. But no, not only was he dying, now he's dead, and your character you love is gone. Then they play with how everybody loves Thor. Everybody, and how he looks, and he's just this guy who breezes in, and everything is easy, and the way they even kept showing him jumping things, and how he is Point Break. He is the guy with the golden hair, and he's just so cool. And then just boom, gone, and standing there, and this was Bill Casey was asking in the chat, when did everyone start to suspect? And it was this moment right here when the arrow fired, because I immediately thought the scene in Civil War with Ant-Man on the end of the arrow. And I know that that's not what happened, but it's just it popped into my head. But just again, him going down and them discussing it, them talking about how there's a space corpse who looks like a Chippendales dancer here that still and smells like lavender, and they're they linger on Coulson smelling in the room, just sitting there going, just so weird. It's such a weird choice, but I love it, because in these really dark scenes, these really sad scenes, losing Clint, who's sitting there just beside himself and then just is dead, and they still throw in the humor for levity, because in the end, where these characters are entering, right? Jackson's had it with Tony. He's like, you're not the center of my universe. Now he's gone. Thor, they didn't even know him. And so there's no attachment. And Barton, that one hurts them, though, because they actually did like Clint. But there's this detachment that they have to where the humor makes sense, because for them, they need the levity a little bit to feel the seriousness of the situation. Not for us, but it just happens to work for me as well. And so I really dug what they did here quite a bit.
Cool. Yeah. Well, you and Bill Casey are a lot more observant than I am, because, as I said in the chat, I had no clue who it was. Allison is with me. She had no idea either. So I want to say hello to a couple people in the chat. Bill Casey. He also says Thor lost his power at that point. He was mortal. Yeah, and that is not at all what my problem is with it. It was more why Hank Pym would kill Thor. And then, yeah, the weird cover up at the end. But yeah, totally correct. He was mortal, so he could be killed at that point. And also, hi, Devra. She's been here every week. Hello, everyone. Sorry I'm late. No worries. Good to see you here. All right, guys. Anything else on that topic? Before we move on. You guys are good. All right. Let's. This was actually my favorite part, or favorite as far as the tour of the Phase 1 films. I liked it when they go into the Incredible Hulk. Now, I didn't actually realize until later that the Incredible Hulk, they did establish that it was taking place at the same time as Thor and Iron Man 2, because it did come out before either of those films. So I was a little thrown off at first because I was like, wait, what? This is taking place at the same time? But that's canon, and I'm totally fine with that. But I loved that they retconned in the Mark Ruffalo Bruce Banner, because honestly, if there was a way that they could like re-release that same movie, but like somehow CGI in Mark Ruffalo and not make it look really cheesy and bad, I would be totally okay with that. And nothing against Edward Norton as an actor. I really love him in general. But Mark Ruffalo is much, but he's Bruce Banner in the MCU, and it's weird anytime I do a rewatch of the MCU and have to sit through this weird Edward Norton being Bruce Banner thing for that film. So I love that they put Mark Ruffalo, and it actually was voiced by Mark Ruffalo himself, which was great. And he comes out of hiding, and he says a very similar line to what he said to Natasha the first time he met her in the MCU, which in the main MCU timeline was in the Avengers film. It was something along the lines of, "Don't do it. It's not going to work out well for anyone." I love that. There's more I want to say about the Hulk. Obviously, there's a big thing that happens with the Hulk, but I want to get you guys' thoughts on this part of it first. Rob, what are your thoughts on Bruce Banner and the introduction of the Mark Ruffalo Bruce Banner, or anything related to that part of the scene?
Yeah, I had a bit of a brain problem with trying to figure out where this all really fits, because the Hulk comes out first, and then you've got the scene at the end with Ross and Stark where they're talking, and it's like, but really, it's all kind of chopped up. So like Iron Man 2's events, I guess, had happened, and then Stark finds Ross. But it's one of those weird, like, why have it in there, and why mess with people's heads? Why have us ask these questions other than to just mess with us? Or did they even know and they just kind of backtracked? I don't know. But I really liked that movie. And like you said, I like Edward Norton a lot. But the choice to like throw in Ruffalo there was pretty funny. I mean, I don't think they were trying, like, I don't think it was like personal to Norton. I think they just needed to to just stay in what everybody knows and not try to mess with anything too much. I didn't quite understand at first what had happened, because like Banner says, like, I kind of can't die. And there's even part of me that's kind of like, is there a pile of orange goo out there that's going to suddenly start to come back out? You know, because I've seen the Hulk go through a lot of things and he still comes back. And it's just one of those unanswerable things, because we're not going to get it. And so to me, I just like to think that he popped, but he's going to come back somehow. Just maybe not for a while. I think it would take him it would take even him a while to come back from that. And whatever the rules they kind of want to have towards hurting, how you can actually hurt the Hulk that much. But I thought it was really good inserting Black Widow in here to be the one to try to get him out. Also because they had this relationship in the regular MCU, and you could almost already see like how she cares. You know, she's like, I'm going to get you out of here. Now they're not in love or nothing or anything in this, but I loved how you get to see them interact in this way. And unfortunately it's the end already for Banner and her. And I liked her facing off against Ross. I liked her being able to protect Betty and putting her in the situation with another scientist to start to figure out what's happening with Bruce gone, but also showing that Betty's not a slouch when it comes to the science stuff. She never was. Like, she was a part of his stuff, and they never really go into that in the movies. So like, she wasn't as smart as Bruce, but I mean, she was there. She was a scientist. They even cover that in the original Ang Lee Hulk, where Jennifer, what's her? Oh gosh, Jennifer Connelly was there as the character, and she was part of the whole thing. So without Bruce, they still had somebody to start to give some answers to open the door to what Natasha discovers. And I thought that was all really cool. I would have liked it if they could have gotten William Hurt to come back as General Ross, but hey, it's all right.
Yeah, they can't get everybody.
Yeah.
And actually, I was going to get
one
into
line,
the Hulk
yeah.
explosion in a bit, but Mark, did you have any thoughts?
Actually, I didn't have that many thoughts on this scene. I thought it was decent. I agree. It was great seeing the Mark Ruffalo doing the role in the Incredible Hulk. I mean, I like Edward Norton too. I thought he was a great actor, but Mark Ruffalo is the Hulk. Like that's all
Yeah.
I think of, especially in the MCU. But the one I did want to talk about, a scene I think we skipped over, which was my favorite scene of the episode. When the Black Widow was being arrested and she was in the van with all those people around her, and she was like, "Oh, do you guys know any songs?" Like, to me, that scene was very reminiscent of the elevator scene in Winter Soldier. That's exactly what I thought of when I saw that scene. I thought she was even going to say, "Does anyone want to get out before we begin?" But they didn't go that obvious with it. But I did really love the way she, and I want to clarify with Lake Bell as the voice. Like, I think she's fine as a voice actress. She doesn't. It's hard for me to connect this to Black Widow because she sounds so different from Scarlett Johansson. But I still really love that scene. I liked her insertion into the scene where we meet Bruce Banner, and it seems to just make more sense with Mark Ruffalo than playing a Mark Ruffalo-esque.
It would have been very strange if they tried to do Edward Norton. So I'm glad they did that. And I forgot about that scene. You're right, and that was kind of a callback to the Winter Soldier scene. And there was a lot of callbacks. Rob even mentioned the scene where she said something like, "I got you." She said something very similar to Bruce Banner in one of the movies. I think it was maybe Age of Ultron, but
So what was nice is that it got us to see Black Widow being Black Widow again after that movie where she wasn't really black. She didn't get to be Black Widow as much, and in this we got to see again how great a character she is and how capable she is, and how she's in a car with a bunch of Hydra agents, and because they are right, they did a really good job of capturing all of those guys because those were guys from that elevator scene, and they did a really good job animating all that.
Well, they brought Frank Grillo back. He was there.
Grillo, and the guy that was next to her was that big, like kind of. And so she was able to take out all those guys from Hydra again. Yeah, very reminiscent to the elevator scene. I remember it. We kind of went over it. I was like, do we need to talk about it? No, but like I'm glad you brought it up because then we get to talk about it because again, like I said, it gets to show how capable and smart Black Widow is, which I think we're about to talk about. And I had a slight issue with it, but only slightly. And I think we're getting to that point, but I'll wait till we get to that point.
Okay, and next, actually, I wanted to get more into the exploding Hulk scene because I've seen a lot of reaction online of people like really freaking out about that. I don't know why. Like when he first, I wasn't freaking out about it because when he first started, blowing up, I could see where it was going. Like it was pretty obvious what was going to happen. So, and I was like, are they going to like have on an animated show? Are they gonna have Hulk guts everywhere? Like, how are they gonna do this? And then just like a big puff of green smoke. And so to me, that's not shocking at all. Like if there were Hulk guts everywhere, that would be kind of like But a puff of green smoke on a cartoon. Like I wasn't really freaked out about that. I didn't think it was that big of a deal personally, but. And I think Bill Casey mentioned in the chat the enlargement disc on his heart was a brutal death. Yeah. So, it was cool to see at the end how they showed Hank Pym killing all the people because I was like, how did that happen? But that does make a lot of sense. Mark, any thoughts on the exploding Hulk?
Yeah, I don't know why people would have an issue with it. I was fine with it. I didn't think it was too shocking. I actually, again, I really like the scene. I like how they built up to it by him saying, "Oh, I kind of can't die," sort of setting your expectations. It's going to be really hard to kill the Hulk. Actually, it's going to be super. Anyway, so they managed to. So the fact that they managed to, like, he started enlarging, because I kind of knew he was going to die at this point, because they killed Iron Man, they killed Thor. I'm like, well, Hulk is gonna die, but how? And so when he started like puffing up, I'm like, oh, that's a really inventive way to kill him. So I was all for it. And if I remember correctly, I think the scene pretty much cuts right after he explodes, so they don't have to deal too much with the Hulk guts everywhere. Which is, it's on Disney Plus, not gonna show Hulk guts everywhere. So I'm fine with it. I really liked it. I thought it was a great scene.
Rob, I think you already touched on it, but did you have any other thoughts on this?
The only other thing I would touch on, and it's just brief, is that has anybody ever seen Akira, the anime? What happens to the Hulk? What happens to the Hulk kind of reminds me of what happens to the guy at the end of the film, where he's just like this big blob that just starts to expand, like very horrifying body horror. Where just that's what it reminded me of.
I heard someone make that. I hadn't seen that film since I was a teenager. Akira, I believe is how it's pronounced. But yeah, I haven't seen that film since I was a teenager, and I wasn't that big into it. But yeah, someone else pointed out that it's very similar, the way he exploded. Yeah.
It's just weird. It was kind of very Cronenberg, kind of just like.
All right, so let's move on. So then Loki comes into the picture. Here's where I had to sort of try to remember the context here. That at this point, so Odin is what was he in that coma, sleep, whatever that was, and so Loki was in charge. So I had to kind of like, remember that. And once Loki started, acting like he was there for Thor, then I was like, oh yeah, okay, all right. So, and yeah, I can kind of see what you were saying, Rob, about about the voice acting. I actually, the scene where Loki is, saying, "I am Loki, the king of blah 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 blah," and Nick Fury's phone keeps going off to interrupt him. It wasn't as funny as I thought it should have been. Like, it was just something about I don't know, like the voice acting there. It was like, I don't know, this should be funnier. I don't know what it was about that scene. But I don't know. I really don't have a whole lot to say about Loki. I thought we should talk about him. That's because he's a big part of this episode. I really want to get into the Hank Pym stuff. But did you guys have any thoughts on Loki? We'll start this time with Rob.
My only thought is, besides what I had already said, is that I like how it counters how Loki and Fury met in Avengers, where he comes out and it's like all of a sudden everything just hits the fan and there's no time. And in this, it's like a proper meeting, and it shows us like how little Fury cares about who he is, where he comes from, what his deal is. You've come here to where we live, and you're going to tell us to kneel and everything. And that's just, we don't do that here. And I like that they gave them a proper introduction this time with even bigger, like just as big as stakes. He's got a whole army. He's got the Warriors 3 there. He's got the Destroyer there behind him. And it doesn't faze Fury in the least. And so when the phone goes up, even though Loki doesn't quite understand like the insult that is, the actual just dismissal of him by just letting the phone ring, we know how much of an insult that is. And Loki can only gauge a little bit of that from it. And I just love that subtlety of Fury just not paying Loki the kind of attention that he is used to as a god.
Yeah, I really. Oh, did you want to say something real quick?
Oh, I was just going to point out Brandon Hell's in the chat comparing Loki to Q. I never thought about that before, but they are actually very similar characters. But anyway, go on, Mark.
Yeah, I think Loki's maybe a bit more petty than Q. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean they're
That's
not
just
exactly the same. I just thought
yeah.
they are kind of similar. Anyway, go on, Mark.
Anyway, yeah. So I really liked the scene. I thought it was great. I actually really enjoyed the phone gag. For me, I thought that was one of the funnier parts of the episode. Um, how the phone kept ringing. I love like the conversation that Nick Fury had with Black Widow when he did answer the phone. It's like, I'm kind of busy right now. It's like, well, I got dealing with Ross and a bunch of guns pointing at me. It's like, well, I'm dealing with space Vikings. Like, show off. Like that kind of like camaraderie was great. And I love that in this situation, that it's a different situation of Loki coming to Earth, that he can't go full like evil because he has to put up some pretenses of this being for revenge for Thor. What do you think? He doesn't give a shit about Thor. But it's a pretense of having, and he's under some restraints with the Asgards, because I love to have Lady Sif come up to him and be like, look, actually, let's hear what Nick Fury has to say. Let's give him a chance. And so he's under more constraint than he was in the Avengers movie. And so that was an interesting spin on it, too. I get what Rob was saying about his voice thing being a bit stiff, but for me, that was more of, there was a different situation that he was, because he was constrained by having to play this role of the, for Asgard, that he couldn't go like full Loki. But it was definitely weird after watching the Loki show, where we got this really outrageous, like comedic, out there voice, where here he definitely seemed more like I'm royalty, kind of more constrained. But I think it is a bit jarring, but I think it fit the scene personally. But yeah, so it's another scene I really enjoyed.
Also, the fact that because of this, he's not going to be dispatched like he was at the end of the first Thor. He's not going to meet Thanos. Like, they're not going to have like all those events that lead to the attack on New York and everything else. And it kind of gives if you think about that, gives it just a little bit of an extra layer to what would be possible for this Loki, having not had to do what happened at the end of the first Thor movie.
Yeah, let's keep talking about Loki. I'm going to jump chronologically in the episode a little bit, because Mark, you were talking about how Loki had to restrain himself. And actually, that's another issue I had with this, is the ending, because you're right. He did sort of have to restrain himself. Then just all of a sudden, it seemed like out of the nowhere, he was just like, I'm going to rule Earth now. Like, wait, what? I don't know. That was jarring to me. That was just seemed like kind of a contrived way to, make this dark ending so you could bring Captain Marvel in at the end, which we'll get to later. But it just seemed like it didn't really fit for me. There's a lot of things that just didn't really fit in the plot, and that was another one and then he basically says the same exact word for word speech that he said in the Avengers film. Humans were made to be subjects or blah blah blah, all of that stuff. And I don't know, that seemed out of nowhere to me. And because what you were saying is exactly right, Mark. He should have been constrained, but then at the end, all of a sudden, he wasn't, and that threw me off. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Mark?
I was fine with it. Looking at it logically, it doesn't. Maybe you shouldn't have been able to go that way, and it's all of a sudden he didn't have constraints. But for me, it's like, classic Loki. It's just they're going a different way to get to the same route, like a different route to get to the same place they arrived in the Avengers. And I could see him. Maybe there could be some pushback, like between the Warriors 3 might be planning a rebellion or whatever. What do they call it? A mutiny to overthrow him when he's come back, and see him trying to push those boundaries. And I'm in charge. I'm going to do what I like. So I was fine with it ultimately.
Rob, any thoughts?
I would say to that, and I guess maybe it's something that you'd have to infer here, which I'm about to do, but is just kind of Loki's character. If he finds out like somebody took out Thor, and he could just take over, and it just says, wait, well, Odin would want us to listen. But also, he might be a little worried, and he might want to know who could take out Thor before he decides to go all and become like King of Earth. Like, if there's somebody that I can't stop, maybe as soon as I have these plans, but maybe I should wait to find out what I'm up against first before I stab everybody in the back. Like, let me remove the threat that's happening right now. Because if this guy's taking out all these powerful people that are supposed to be these Avengers, what if he could stop me? And then, when they find out what's going on, he look how much fun he was having. And that's going towards the end. And I think it just kind of falls into Loki's character to not count his chickens before they're hatched, like a little bit. Like, let me see what I'm really up against before I make my decision to take over this place.
Well, I think, and Bill Casey's pointing out that he stabs people in the back for breakfast, especially in phase 1. And that's not my issue. My issue was that, as Mark was pointing out, like he was playing coy, he was holding back. Like, he had to put on a show for the Warriors 3, and like he was, he in the original film, if I recall, like, I mean, he was more sneaky about, I guess, his evil plans. Like, to just all of a sudden outright, I'm going to be the ruler of Earth now. There's no way the Warriors 3 are going to go for that. They're not going to say, oh, this is exactly what Odin would want. And there's no way that anyone who's loyal to Odin is going to be like, what the F is going on here? Like, this, we're not here to take over Earth. So I get it's not the fact that he backstabbed, it's the fact that he was so just upfront about it. And it just, earlier in the episode, he was kind of, being more like the Loki I know, like just being sly and being clever about his plans, and not just outright saying, I'm going to rule Earth now, because people are going to resist that, people within Asgard. So that just seemed a little, I don't know, seemed a little weird to me. But I do want to move on to, we got to talk about the Hank Pym of it all. And I did really like this. We've touched on this a little bit before about how the gotcha moment, the change in the timeline moment happened prior to this episode. And so actually, I don't know if you guys caught this or if you watched any other YouTube videos where they talk about this, but I didn't catch this. But so apparently the Winter Soldier killed Hope Van Dyne. You guys hip to that? Yeah. So there's a line in here that I thought it was kind of a throwaway line. I wasn't even really listening, where Nick Fury says that she was killed in Odessa. And people are connecting that to a scene in Winter Soldier where Natasha talks to Steve about something that happened to her in Odessa, and how she had a personal encounter with the Winter Soldier, and how the Winter Soldier had shot her, and she shows Steve her scar from when the Winter Soldier shot her. So the implication is that instead of Natasha being there in Odessa, it was actually Hope Van Dyne in this. So that's actually the that's where it is moment, is when Hope Van Dyne was sent to that location instead of Natasha. And Hope Van Dyne, unlike Natasha, did not survive. So in that encounter, it was the Winter Soldier who had shot Natasha, and therefore the implication is it was the Winter Soldier who killed Hope Van Dyne, which I find interesting. I don't know that we're going to ever return to this particular universe. I don't know that becomes a thing that they explore more. I think it's probably more of a we're going to throw in this little kind of Easter egg for fans to find, and it's cool, which I like too. I think that is pretty cool. Rob, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, that was really, I mean, Winter Soldier is my favorite film from the MCU, single film, not epic like Endgame. And I liked that they threw that in there, because I mean, I at first had a problem with, like, well, why didn't they, because Hope Van Dyne was never established as an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. They started going down that route, and I was like being too comic book nerdy about it. And like, that's before I realized I needed to check myself there a little bit, because this was necessary to reveal the mystery proper, that because of Fury recruiting her, that's all of his motivations to get there. But I thought that the addition of that is just a nice nod to all the people paying attention. to all the people that really do watch all these movies and check out for all the Easter eggs and all the different ins and outs that are even inside these episodes that are just, bits of fun that you don't have to, I guess, take too seriously, but still, reward the people who pay attention. And I like that quite a bit.
So, a question: did you pick up on that yourself?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Like I did not, like I wasn't even really paying attention when he said the Odessa line, and I didn't really remember that scene. So yeah, Mark, you looked a little bit surprised. So I take it you didn't pick up on that either.
No, I did not know that. No, I didn't catch that at all. Didn't catch that little reference, but it's interesting. It's an interesting little tidbit to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know unless they, do a sequel to this episode and give back to this universe, I don't know that that's something you can follow up on necessarily, but it's just a cool little Easter egg. Now I want to move on to another scene that I didn't like, but they did a thing that, to be fair, a lot of films and television shows have done, mostly films, I feel like, that just bugs me. It's just a plot contrivance that just bugs me. And that is when, Natasha encounters Hank Pym and you don't see Hank Pym on screen. You just see her getting her ass kicked by some invisible force. And she goes, the phone happens to be on so the Nick Fury can hear it. And she's going, because she was trying to call him. And she's going, it's hope. It's all about hope. So that we can create this mystery for the audience and for Nick Fury. Oh, what does that mean? What does she mean? Hope? That doesn't make sense. How could it be hope? Just say it's freaking Hank Pym. Just like when you are trying to yell into the phone, just go, it's Hank Pym. It's Hank Pym. Not, it's hope. Oh, we got to make it all. That could have multiple meanings. What is the mystery? And I've seen, this is a thing that I've seen like a lot in film and television. This is not the first one that does, but it always bugs me when they do that. It's just like a contrivance. It doesn't bother me that much. I didn't like ruin the show for anything, but just a little bit. Like I hate it when scenes do that. But I don't know if you guys have anything to say about that or not. But Mark.
I thought about. I didn't catch that the first time, but then when I thought about it, I watched it actually the second time, and then when I watched it, I was like, "Wait, why doesn't she just say it's Hank Pym?" Like that was a bit of a contrivance to keep the mystery going. I totally agree, but ultimately, it didn't really. It's like the kind of contrivance you see.
Yeah, it didn't bother me that much. It's just a thing that I've seen happen before, so it's just kind of like I have a little pet peeve with those sorts of things. But it's not like it made the episode suck just because they did that. But any thoughts, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, this scene started out really good. I loved we get more Coulson and him finding out his password is what was it? Hashtag Steve I heart Steve 0704, and just her like being just rushing like thank you so much for that, even though she's not going to live much longer with it. Absolutely, it's like when people pick up a gun that's just been fired, like obviously laying there, that's the murder weapon, and they always pick it up and you're like, why'd you pick up the gun? You're just setting yourself up for being, your prints were on the gun. Like it's the same kind of contrivance of like, just say who it is, but they want to keep the mystery going. And I the other part, and I said we were getting to this, and I know that it probably just makes sense, and it's something I just got to let go of. Is just, would she have sat there letting her, like, I know he was attacking her kind of fast, but she also would do this, like getting into a fighting stance. And I just thought Natasha would be smart enough to know, I don't know where this person is. I got to get out of here. Like, I can't win this fight. I know someone's there. I just feel like she's so smart to know when she needs to get the hell out of a situation. And I just that part bugged me a little bit, but again, I just have to let those little things go and enjoy it, because everybody has to die. All the original Avengers up to that point are going to die, and it helps. It just shows how far gone Hank Pym is gone, and just also that's almost a contrivance too of the person who finds out the right information and then gets taken out. Like, and not quite being able to give the answer to the person who needs it. And you're just like, oh, we had him right there. And that person who's been so effective the whole episode, you're so behind him. It's Black Widow, and she's sticking around, and nobody's been able to take her out. And then that happens. And maybe again, it's playing with our audience, like what we think of her as a character, and it gets dashed again. It's just nobody's safe in this one. Nobody is safe. So it was still pretty cool, though.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right, but I also wonder, would she have really been able to get away with him, even or from him, if she had even tried to? Like, couldn't he just follow her? And I don't know. But you're right. She should have just gotten out of there. But then you needed the dramatic scene of her saying, "It's hope, it's hope." So she had to stay there, so the show could happen. Yes. So then we get to the big Hank Pym reveal, which I actually did like, and I, as I said earlier, didn't have any clue. So I thought that was a really great reveal. I did know that pretty much immediately that wasn't Nick Fury. It was Loki, especially after you see him go to see Loki and you don't see what happens. But I still thought that was a great scene. I actually, the whole thing, I think this was a really great way to wrap up this story, with everything from the reveal of Hank Pym, why he did it, and then all the way up to the multiple Nick Furies, which phase into the multiple Lokis laughing. I loved all of that stuff. What did you think of that scene, Rob?
I thought as soon as the Loki Fury said, "I don't give a damn about any of these people," I was like, oh, I mean, yeah, the jump was a sign. I loved Douglas's response of, "Well, you're pretty spry for a guy who has a corner office, corner cubicle or whatever." But also, just for me, I know we had said that what the Hank Pym we've seen is not really like this. But for me, I go to that that scene in Ant-Man where he's facing off against Carter, Stark, and the other jerk that doesn't last long in the movie, and how he was affected by his wife's death, and how he always felt to me like one bad day away from madness. Like this guy who's super freaking smart, and in his character in the comics has been very, very volatile. And we don't need to go too far into the whole he slapped his wife in the comics kind of thing, but he's always been kind of a hothead in the comics, and I like that they've still kind of played him as kind of on the edge in the movies. He's been, he has his daughter, and you can tell how much he cares about her more than anything else throughout those two movies. You can say that about him, and that she's his whole life. And I can appreciate that it definitely just was too much for him to see his wife die for saving the world, and then his daughter gets convinced that she can save the world, and she dies too. And he was kind of a guy who would go after people who he thought wronged him. Even in that, like when he punches the guy in Ant-Man, like he's got a fuse. We just see Michael Douglas, and we like Michael Douglas, and and it's kind of hard to get past that, I think, maybe a little bit. Even for me, I just don't see him as that kind of guy. But like, I loved that they decided to let him just look all disheveled and mad with grief at that, the loss of this person and what that makes someone do to take away from everyone else. And even his excuse for killing Thor, like when you've gone that kind of crazy, you can't, just reason it away.
Yeah, I agree. I think it makes sense for his character when you follow him through the Ant-Man films. I think, because he's very obsessed with finding his wife. He's very overprotective and obsessed with his daughter. So if she had died a couple years ago and he blamed S.H.I.E.L.D., I think that is a totally believable reaction. I did have to suspend. I decided to go ahead and suspend just a little bit of disbelief that he would enact his revenge by killing the Avengers. That seemed a little contrived to me. Like I feel like there were more effective ways to get to Nick Fury. But I decided to let that one go. That was when I was like, that's fine. They needed this. They needed the episode to happen. So sure, I'll go with that. But as far as his character and him being crazy, I think it was totally within character. Anyway, Mark, I don't think you've had a chance to chime in on this yet.
All right, so this I did not see this coming at all. I was totally shocked by the Hank Pym reveal. Even when after Natasha was fighting an invisible, I was like, is there like an invisible person that she's fighting? Like, I couldn't figure it out. I think part of the reason why is that I just wasn't thinking Hank Pym because I didn't think of him in those ways. Like, but looking back on the episode, I totally agree with what you guys are saying. That it's he is that type of character. It's totally within his character that if he lost his daughter, he would react in that sort of vengeful way. But it's still seen, and this is the only scene in the whole episode I had an issue with, because it wasn't that it was Hank Pym, it's the way they revealed it. It seemed very like Perry Mason to me, like, I did it was me, and here I'm going to tell you exactly why. Like, it seemed very like cliche mystery thing. But it didn't bother me too much. But that's, if there was one thing I would pinpoint on the episode, it would be that. And plus, it just seemed really, really out of left field. Like, let's just do any character in the entire. Like, I think because I think Alyssa, you just brought it up that the his motivations for going after the Avengers seemed a bit thin. Like, he could have gone. There's other ways to get revenge on Nick Fury. But so that was the only like slight issue I had with the episode, but overall, like, it didn't interfere with my enjoyment. I still enjoyed it. I still like you guys said, it made total sense for Hank Pym's character when you look at it and his attachment, that he would go a bit off the walls if he had lost his daughter like that. But the Nick Fury being Loki, like, I immediately, like, throughout the entire scene, like, I was like, oh, that's Loki. Like so, and especially when they started fighting, I'm like, oh yeah, that is so Loki. So I wasn't shocked at all by that, but I was surprised by the Hank Pym reveal. I didn't see that coming at all, but so
it doesn't even seem like they were, like, Fury was even mocking his motivations, that they were kind of thin. Like, really? You gotta do all this, like, just because you could? Like, he even had that tilt in his voice. He's like, really? Like, what? Like, what? Like, he was just trying to wrap his head around it himself. And it definitely comes together like the end of like a Scooby-Doo or a Perry Mason or whatever, where it's just like, what I got, like, where it's just like, but it was still, like, of all the episodes, this one just really nailed everything that I want. Like, I'm going to be eating a lot of crow, because I really was like not looking forward to this episode, and I was verbalizing it. I was just like so beside myself, and to just have everything just the way it plays out. And the more I think about it, I think I'm going to end up liking it more and more as it goes along, because like it shows that this series can be beyond like what we were initially thinking of, like, just switching out roles and things like this, or worried about, like, is this going to be something that needs to be called back? Are they going to revisit this? This feels actually like a self-contained story, and there's nothing that's really going to go, there's no post-credit scene or anything like this. This feels like one of these two comics, like, where they just tell you the story, and some crazy stuff happens, and you just go with it and you walk out. And I just felt so satisfied with all of it in the end, despite minor gripes that we can find about just about any show we watch.
Well, you can get a post-credit or a continuation. You can see the two captains take on Loki.
Yeah, well, I felt like that was more of a Fury always has a plan. Like, there's always more. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I was just happy that Cap lived through this, because Cap's my favorite. So I was like, Cap dodged the bullet.
All right, Let's move on to that final scene. We're over an hour now, so I want to start wrapping this up, but we definitely have to talk about that final scene. I like how the little misdirect, even though it wasn't really misdirect because you saw the Captain Marvel pager already, but like how he goes, "Oh, hi, Captain," while he's looking at the shield, and then it's Captain Marvel. I thought this was a really nice reversal of the previous week's episode, whereas the previous week it was like, "Oh, happy," and T'Challa's going around and making everybody a better person, and everything is happy and wonderful, and then the ending is like, dun dun dun, ego. So it was a upbeat, happy episode with a dark ending, and this was kind of the reverse of that, where it was a much darker episode. All the Avengers are dying, and then you have like a little bit of a positive at the end, like, "Oh, Captain Marvel's back, everything's going to be okay now." So, and as you said, it'll be both captains because they'll get Captain America out, they'll have Captain Marvel, and yeah, I don't know if we need a follow-up episode for that. I just kind of assume, the captains will kick. I mean, Captain Marvel's pretty powerful on her own. That's why they had to send her away, because they couldn't have had all the other films if Captain Marvel was on Earth. She would just kick everybody's ass, which is, I think, a problem that a lot of people have with her. But I thought it was good. I liked the little Captain Marvel reveal at the end. What were your thoughts on that, Mark?
Well, I think it kind of cleared up the little plot hole people complaining about, like when Captain Marvel came out. They're like, "Well, if you had the Captain Marvel pager, why didn't he just use it? And when Loki was there, why did he try to get the Avengers?" But this is like making it clear that was like his backup. That was his last resort. That was like in case of emergency break glass, which we did end up using it for in the whole Infinity War thing. And so his first plan was, and it would make more sense, to use the people who are already on Earth right there in front of him, use the Avengers initiative. It's only when that failed that he resorted to the pager. So I did like that aspect of it. So yeah, I liked it. I thought it was a good ending.
Rob?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of already started in because I was just so excited about like that Cap lived and he's gonna team up with Captain Marvel, and I just imagined it in my head because like we had talked about, the Warriors 3 wouldn't be down with this, Sif wouldn't be down with this, Odin would be down with this. So like between Cap and Captain Marvel would probably just go to Asgard and say, "Hey, we got to get these people out here. We just wipe Loki out," and then down the road, my brain takes me to like what new Avengers would come out and how would they fight Thanos this time, and like how would it all work out. And I try not to go down that rabbit hole too hard, but it's kind of fun to do that with an episode like this and not need another episode. I just, it's just stuff that you can have fun with yourself and not worry about it. And that, again, was the epitome of what I liked about good what if stories, is that you can interpret it how it goes on yourself and you don't need any more. And that just, boom, just kudos. Like, if this is what they can do just more often, I'm so excited for more of the episodes.
All right. That's actually a good way to start wrapping this up. Did either of you have any last thoughts before we anything that we missed you want to throw out there really quickly, or any other final thoughts? Mark?
Just one thing I wanted to point out is I love the animation, how they would put the Watcher in the backgrounds of the scenes of like the sky. Like that was amazing.
Yeah.
Beautiful animation. A good way just to give that subliminal message reminder that the Watcher is watching.
When I saw that, it made me think, did they do that in the other episodes and I missed it? Or was this really the first time that they did that?
Yeah, I mean, if they did, I missed it too. I don't remember them saying
Yeah, I thought that was very cool too. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I don't know if they did it, but it was really effective here. I genuinely want a poster of the desert scene with Coulson's car and just how it was all eternity and space in this really bright desert scene. It was gorgeous. It was so well animated. Again, that's one of the strongest parts of this. I guess I wrote down a stupid, silly thing about how Pym says, like, honor her, like honor Hope then. And I'm like thinking, well, if all it was going to take was a conversation, somebody should have just gotten T'Challa down here to explain things to Hank Pym. And then we would have avoided all of this. You know, like if all it took was a simple conversation to a crazy guy to stop his crazy plan, then that's all we need, you know?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. All right. So let's wrap this up. And why don't you guys say your goodbyes? Say, just tell people where they can find you and what you're up to. We'll start with you, Rob.
All right. Well, you can find me at my channel, Smikring Gun Reviews, where we're doing Rob's Never Seens, where I talk about classic movies that I should have seen by now and somehow have not. We do Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 4. We're about to start The Leftovers Season 3. We're still doing Doctor Who's Peter Capaldi run. On Smikring Gun Plays, we're still playing The Witcher on Twitch. And you can find me on Twitter at reviews_gun and comic reviews. We're back with more comic reviews. And next Friday night at 8 p.m., I'm going to have the artist of the runaway hit Stray Dogs back on my channel to talk about the variants, the trade paperback, new comic book day stuff. Really, really cool chick. Can't wait to talk about her live on the channel next Friday.
Cool. Awesome. Sounds fun. Mark, what are you up to?
Well, one last thing I want to mention about this episode, because you gave your rating for it earlier. I want to give my rating for this episode.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mark. Yeah,
I give it a 9 out of 10.
Okay.
This was my favorite, as I mentioned before. This is my favorite of the three.
And I mentioned before it's a 7 out of 10. I would give the others an 8 and a 9, so this was like a 7. It's still pretty good, but probably my lowest ranked. You give it a 9. Yeah. Okay, awesome. All right. I'm sorry I didn't let you do your rating. Go ahead.
I think the first two would be 7s for me. Like the first two are 7s, and this one's a 9. Yeah. But all right, so yes, my name is Mark. My channel is Enchantment of Eternity. I'm doing reviews while I'll be here just talking about What If every week. But on my channel, I'll be doing reviews for Star Trek Lower Decks. My review this week is going to be a bit late because, as I mentioned, I'm feeling a bit sick at the moment, so I'm going to wait till I'm feeling a bit better to get that one out, and I might be behind on some of my other reviews because of this illness. But when I get back to it, I'll do some more Better Call Saul reviews, as well as covering Star Wars Clone Wars and various random Star Trek and Expanse stuff as well, so be sure to check me out for that.
All right. And we don't have a date yet, but at some point in the future, probably on your channel, the near future, you and I are going to get together and talk about some more seasons of Star Trek Voyager as well. So my name is Alyssa. This is Alyssa Jean's Reviews, the channel you are watching right now. If you haven't already, check out all my other MCU stuff. I just started covering, I've just done all the MCU Phase 4 stuff, so I have reviews on the other 4 projects of Phase 4 so far. And like Mark, I got Star Trek. Here's a big announcement. I need to do my Lower Decks review this week as a live stream because I just don't have time, and I'm leaving early tomorrow morning to jet out of town, and then I won't be back until Monday, so I don't have time to do like the edited version with music and pictures and all of that stuff. So I was just going to do it as a live stream. So I need to go eat dinner, and then I will pop back on here in about half an hour. So if you're watching this, Allison, Brandon, if you're in there, if you want to come back in a half hour and see what my thoughts on Lower Decks, or Mark, you can as well send into Lower Decks. I'm going to do it this week as a live stream, and about a half hour from now if you're watching this live. And if you're not watching this live, then go check it out in the archives if you're into Star Trek, and check out all of my reviews on Lower Decks. And last week, Mark and I did a joint review, which we posted on both of our channels, which was kind of fun. But yeah, please subscribe if you have not already. You can follow me on Twitter at Alyssa J Reviews, and I believe it's the same handle on Instagram as well. So you can check me out on both those places, and Facebook, Alyssa Jean Reviews. So hope to see you all soon. Have a good night.
It's all about hope.
That's right.